Okay, the news breaks about the shooting in Orlando a couple days ago. My colleague and I, Art, we have an RV. We're on a book tour. We're sitting in the RV, and I decided I'm going to go step by step through an investigation and connect the dots on this case, just like I used to when I was active duty, except for one caveat. I don't have classified information anymore. So I'm going to do this thing open source. So in order for me to verify or drive a stake into the ground for the beginning of the case, the first thing that I had to do was irrefutably verify that Omar Mir Siddiqui Mateen was in fact affiliated with the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce. We heard bits and pieces of it. So I gathered up all the open source information I could find, I laid it on the table, and I went after it. And I queried and I queried, and I finally found an article in the Palm Beach Post, local paper, quoting the Imam, whose name is Shafiqur Rahman, that yes, indeed, Omar Mir Siddiqui Mateen was a member of this mosque. Now I have the stake in the ground. It's a solid, probable cause level piece of law enforcement information that you can build a case on top of, and it'll stand forever because it's on solid fact. So then what do you suppose I did? I went to the website of the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce. And lo and behold, what do I find right on their website? That they're directly affiliated with the Sharia Board of America. Well, right off there, there's a big, bright, blinking red light because the word Sharia should be an immediate warning. Sharia law is illegal in the United States because it's in direct conflict with the U.S. Constitution. And yet we constantly hear from apologists and spokesmen that they have no intention of implementing Sharia law in the United States. Well, if that's the case, then why is the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce directly linked to a group called Sharia Board of America? Well, I can tell you why. Because their goal is to implement Sharia law in the United States. Next, I go to its founding or its parent organization called Rahmat-i-Alam Foundation. Rahmat-i-Alam means mercy to the world. I'm already in the Tablighi Jamaat case, and I know it because it's all up here in the old noodle. I can remember everything about the cases that I do. I'm starting to realize right now that this is going to be the second case that's tied directly, along with San Bernardino, to the case that the federal government shut down because of concerns about civil rights and civil liberties. So I go from Rahmat al-Alam clear up to Dar al-Uloom, Chicago. Does anybody remember the mosque's name in San Bernardino? Dar al-Uloom al-Islamiyya. Now I have a direct connection. There's the network. The thing in Orlando is like a radioactive spill from a nuclear power plant. It's part of a network that's spread across the entire United States. And this is one of the points I want to try to make. Every time we see an act of terrorism in the United States, the finger eventually always goes to ISIS. This network is not even Arabic. This is Indian subcontinent in origin. It's an entirely different branch, if you will, of a big tree. The notion that everything originates from ISIS is a false notion, and it will lull us into a sense of complacency that will get us hurt over and over and over again. There are more than one networks operating at the same time in the United States. Then from Dar al-Uloom, Chicago, I go right up to the Institute of Islamic Education. This is the case that I worked on with the 67 direct deleted records. And from there, one more step, and we're into the Tablighi Jamaat initiative. Now I have a direct, no-gap link all the way from the mosque in Fort Pierce all the way up to the case that I garnered 1,200 law enforcement actions from in 11 months, 100 a month, which is like 25 a week. Plus, I was given, as you will see in the book if you have looked at it, credit for finding 300 terrorists while I was working at the NTC on a TDY. How many terrorists were involved in this shooting in Orlando? One. How many in San Bernardino? 2, maybe 3, depending on how you want to count it. How about Fort Hood? 1. How about Chattanooga? One. How about Boston bombing? A couple, 2 or 3 maybe. Still waiting to see about that. How many did I get credit for? 300. That's right. So I broke this on Breitbart a couple days ago, and now things are blowing up. I don't criticize my law enforcement colleagues, but when Director Comey said that we had done all we had, my immediate question was, did you talk to CBP? When you conducted your investigations on the ground of Mateen, did you share any of the information with CBP so that they would know if he traveled and he was coming back and forth, they can collect more data for you? Or on the other hand, did CBP ever know that he was being investigated by the FBI? Probably not. And the reason why is because we don't have reciprocity. We can't share information directly. It has to go through a liaison called the Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF liaison. And that's the state of things where we are. But there's one more point. Does anybody recall what Mateen's father said about his son when the news started breaking? Just to paraphrase. Well, guess what we found out this morning? Senior Mateen is the vice president of the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce. Which tells you now, and it proves my point all along, that this is a network of organizations. There's no such thing as a random act of violence any more than there is a random ant of violence, because ants live in colonies. And if you take an ant away from its fellow ants and put him in a little jar, he'll die within hours. As soon as you separate the ant from the colony, he just turns into a raisin and dies. He has to be within the environment. Same with the Islamic world. And let me finish up with the real nature of the threat. It's not jihad. It's Sharia. The reason we see jihad is a tactic. Sharia law is the strategy. And we're fighting tactics when we don't understand the strategy, and we are doomed to fail every time. Because in shooting, those of you who shoot know you have to acquire the target and stay aimed in. What if the target is moving? And you insist on firing at where the target was? You'll never hit anything. But what if you know where your target's going to end up in 10 minutes from now, over there in that corner? You wait. That's the difference between strategy and tactics. We will not be successful in defending our liberties and values till we comprehend the true nature of the gravitational force of Sharia law vis-a-vis the U.S. Constitution. It's not about our neighbors. It's not about prayer. It's not about freedom of religion. It's about Sharia law versus the Constitution. We need to shift the narrative, take the remote away and say we're not going to watch that channel anymore. We're going to watch this channel. This is the U.S. Constitution channel right there. It's staying on that, period. And if we evaluate everything on that basis, including the upcoming elections, ask yourself who is more likely to stand up for the values of the U.S. Constitution. That's the basis that you should use in evaluating not only presidential candidates, but every other part of our society too. We need to have a secular revival and go back to the U.S. Constitution. As in a matter of fact, we need to have a spiritual revival to upgrade our own integrity. Because it's absolutely impossible that if I had taken that vow and I didn't have personal integrity after being investigated 9 times, what do you think would have happened to me? I would have been dead meat a long time ago. So thank you all for listening.